The city of Bologna is well known for its beautiful setting at the foothills of the Apennine Mountains in north-central Italy. Bologna is the home of Europe's oldest university, which was founded in the late 11th century. The city is famous for its historic medieval palaces and churches, and its scenic covered walkways and arcades. Bologna is also famous for its traditional Italian cuisine and for its central market with fresh fruits, vegetables, and handmade pasta. For centuries, the city has been known for its experimental artists, famous composers, and its opera house, the Teatro Comunale. The Basilica of San Petronio had one of Europe's finest orchestras during the Baroque era. But less well known are the priceless musical instruments still in use today, both in San Petronio and also in the Tagliavini collection at the city museum known as San Colombano. In this program, we'll learn about the historic keyboard instruments of Bologna, and we'll hear them as they sound today. In 1388, Bologna's governing body, the Council of 600, proclaimed that a new church would be built in the center of town, dedicated to the Saint Protector of Bologna. 2 years later, construction began on San Petronio, conceived as the largest church in Christendom, with the largest nave and transept ever built. The transept was to have been surmounted by an immense spire or dome. But church politics prevented completion of the original grand design. The facade of San Petronio was never completed, so that much of the red brickwork on the front of the basilica remains naked today. Completed in 1468, the interior of the nave features an Italian Gothic design, terminating in a beautiful apse, or Cappella Maggiore. On the two sides of the Cappella Maggiore are two of the most important early organs in Italy. The older and larger of the two, built in the late 15th century, sits on the east wall of the Cappella. And on the west wall, a newer organ was installed about 100 years later. The two organs are designed to complement each other and to play together.
I am sitting on one of the oldest existing organs, still preserved in conditions very close to the original state. The instrument was built between 1470 and 1475 by the great organ builder Lorenzo da Prato. For this time, it had, as it has now, the exceptional rank of more than 4 octaves, that is 51 keys from the very low F to the high A. It had, as it has still now, the exceptional number of 10 stops. This instrument has 2 prospects, a front one and a rear prospect. In the front we have the large low principal sounding 2 octaves lower than the normal pitch of today. On the other side, the octave principle, speaking both 1 octave lower, or if you want, on the normal pitch. The low principal has 2 ranks in the treble, and this rear principal has 3 ranks. For this reason, this instrument is singing in a very clear and brilliant way. This organ was modified in 1531 by another famous organ builder, Giovanni Battista Facchetti, who kept very faithful to the original structure of the instrument, but transposed the pitch, the very high pitch, which was at the origin 3 semitones higher than the pitch normal today. This pitch was lowered by 1 tone. Facchetti also added 3 more keys in form of divided keys or split keys in order to have the couples G sharp, A flat, which are different sounds with the old temperament, being identical with the equal temperament normally used today. The organ had a pedal board without any independent stop, but with a pull down with the manual. Since the manual is extended down in the bass, the pedal normally sounds notes not played with the hands, and has, for this reason, a kind of independent function. The instrument, this organ, by Lorenzo da Prato, was restored in the 70s of the 20th century. It was a very huge work. We had to study many years and to be very careful in our choices and also during the work. Finally, since the organ was preserved in the structure given to the instrument by Facchetti, we restored the instrument in this historical stage, but respecting also later important additions, like, for instance, the addition in 1555 of a stop called flauto in duodecima, a fifth flute. I said that we had to meditate very much for this restoration in order to respect the historical substance, to respect also the additions and modifications which are historically important, and making what is necessary in every restoration of historical objects. That is, that nothing has to be irreversible. The growth of double chorus music at the end of the 16th century induced the Bolognese to have a second organ installed in front of the old one. Pro musica duplex responsiva ac alternata. That means for double chorus music and for alternations. For this important job, a distinguished organ builder was chosen, Baldassarre Malamini, from Cento, a town between Ferrara and Bologna. Malamini built this instrument in 1596. Although the sound ideal of Malamini was the new late Renaissance ideal, not anymore the Gothic one of the old organ of the Prato, the new organ was built on the model of the old, but with reduced proportions. Thus, to tally with the great 24-foot front facade principle of the old organ, we have in the front facade, a 16-foot principle. And in the rear facade, in both organs, we have a stop tuned 1 octave higher than the front one. Also, in both instruments, the front facade principle is duplicated in the treble, and the rear facade is triplicated. The other stops of the new organ are corresponding to those of the old one after the additions by Facchetti and Cipri. Ripieno stops, that means octave and fifth. Flauto in ottava, octave flute, and flauto in duodecima, 12th flute. As in the old organ, also in the new, there are 3 couples of divided keys or split keys. In the old one, we only have couples for G sharp and A flat, but we know from the documents that Facchetti wanted to have also split keys for E flat and D sharp. That was made by Malamini, who has 1 couple of split keys, just as E flat and D sharp. During the centuries, the instrument had some important changes. The most important was made in 1640-41 by the organ builder Antonio dal Corno Colonna, who substituted the octave of the rear facade by a 16-foot principle doubled in the treble, like the front principle. At the beginning of the 19th century, the range of the instrument that was at the origin from the low 16-foot C to the A2, a little less than 5 octaves, was extended up to the C3, reaching the complete compass of 5 octaves. the first one remaining a short octave. Facchetti also added a stop in a place on the chest that has remained empty, just for the addition of one stop. And this stop is a beautiful voce umana. Looking at the instrument now, you see them in the situation they received at the middle of the 17th century, when the church was finished in the conditions we have it today, not according to the huge original projects. And at this time, a new choir was built. The instruments were placed on this choir, and the old cases, the Gothic case of the da Prato organ and the Renaissance case of the Malamini were enveloped in new Baroque cases that did not destroy the old one preserved underneath.
The Church of San Columbano was founded in the late Middle Ages, just inside the old medieval walls of the city. During its long and complicated history, San Columbano first served as a monastery of monks dedicated to the Irish saint Columbanus. Later, it served Benedictine nuns, and more recently, the university. In 2005, a charitable foundation bought the church, as well as the adjacent chapel and oratory built as an annex to the church in the 16th century. This historic complex of church, chapel, and oratory has been meticulously restored to display its original artwork and to serve as the home for one of Europe's most important collections of keyboard instruments, the Tagliavini collection.
This organ, placed in the apse of the San Columbano church, was built in the second half of the 17th century by the Poncini family, one of the most important organ builder school in Parma. Its prospect is of refined elegance. The facade is exceptionally divided in 7 spans, 4 of which containing just only 1 pipe. 6 pipes in 2 spans are stamped. The organ has 8 stops. 1 is the principal, tuned to the normal pitch. 5 are building the ripieno, and they are tuned to the different octaves and fifths of the fundamental sound. The 2 other stops are a flute tuned to the 12th, that means to the 5th of the octave, flauto in duodecima, and the last one is the voce umana, tuned sharper than the principal and giving, together with the principal, a vibrato sound. The keyboard has 45 keys, 4 octaves, with the first short octave missing the first 4 chromatic notes. The organ has also a pedal board without any independent stop, but pulling down the keys of the keyboard. This organ, placed on the gallery of the San Colombano church, was built about 1760 by Petronio Giovagnoni, one of the finest organ builders in Bologna at that time. The small organ has 6 stops, and the range of its keyboard is 4 octaves. The first one being the so-called short octaves. That means an octave without the first 4 chromatic keys. C sharp, E flat, F sharp, and G sharp are missing in this first octave. The stops are, first of all, the principale, in the fundamental pitch, we say in the 8-foot pitch. 3 others belong to its family and are giving the octave and the double octave, even the triple octave, and the double fifth. They correspond to sounds of the so-called harmonic series. The octave stops are divided in treble and bass. That means that these stops have a break between tenor B flat and tenor B. They jump 1 octave lower. All these 4 stops, principal with the 2 octave and the 5th, are giving the ripieno, the full organ. The 2 other stops are a flauto in duodecima, a flute stop tuned at 12, about the normal pitch. And finally, the last stop is the voce umana, a kind of second principle tuned in the normal pitch, but tuned a little sharper in order to produce, together with the principale, a light oscillation, remembering the vibrato of the human voice. That is the principal, that is the voce umana, both together. The pipes are by tin, except for the low notes of the principale, corresponding to wooden pipes, and of the pipes of the voce umana by lead. Not only because of the pure tin used for the principale and the ripieno stops, but also for the very fine voicing, the organ has a very brilliant and silvery sound. I'm sitting beside one of the oldest instruments of the collection, an Harpsichordo, that is the most spread form of spinet in Italy in the 16th century, analogous to the northern virginal. Like the virginal, the Arpicordo has two bridges on the soundboard, and the jacks are passing through the soundboard. The instrument was built probably around 1540, and it is attributed to Alessandro Trasuntino, born in Bergamo. Trasuntino was the founder of the Venetian organ and harpsichord building art of the 16th century. The instrument has a range, the normal range of 4 octaves, with first octave short from the low C to the C3. Underneath the key of the first octave, we found traces of a pull-down pedal that was rebuilt when we restored the instrument. Then, that is an instrument of the family of the harpsichord, in which also the pedal can be used. The painting was made much later, about 2 centuries later, and is attributed without any doubt to the Bolognese painter Giacopo Antonio Mannini. It is interesting that we have here in the same oratory of San Colombano another instrument with a painting of the same Mannini. It is a harpsichord built in 1686 by the father Fabius de Bologna. The present instrument is the oldest grand harpsichord of the collection. It is a beautiful example of the Neapolitan school, both in the instrument and in the painting. Also, it was built by a Venetian artist, Nicoló Albana. The year of the construction was 1584. As it was customary in Italy, the instrument is contained in an outer case having the same shape of the instrument. The harpsichord could be played outside and inside of the outer case. Outside, normally, when it was played together with other instruments. The original range was exceptionally of 5 octaves, from the low C to the C4, with 57 keys. Around the middle of the 17th century, changes were made. A second stop was added because at the origin the instrument had just only one stop. That means one set of strings. And also the range was modified to the compass from the very low G to the F3, 55 keys. Most frequently, the walls of Italian harpsichord and spinets are by cypress wood, but in this case they are by maple. The inside surface of the walls are very elegantly and in refined way decorated with satin, incised wood and parchment. On the name board, the so-called name board, in spite of the fact that the name of the author is not written here, we see very nice female figures. On the inside surface of the main part of the lid, there is a mythological scene representing the goddess Selene, goddess of the moon, and Endymion. On the front part of the lid, that has to be seen from the front of the instrument, you can see Saint Cecilia playing the organ. The Neapolitan Alessandro Fabbri, organ and instrument maker at the court of Naples, built this instrument in 1598. It belongs to the type of the Neapolitan spinet, having many elements different from other kinds of spinets. For instance, the tuning pins placed on the rear instead of being in the front or on the right side. Its walls are exceptionally made by olive wood, and the keyboard has the covers of the diatonic keys by ivory. The range is the normal one with 4 octaves, the first one being short. The splendid painting on the lid showing King David playing the harp was made by the well-known Neapolitan painter of Greek birth, Belisario Corenzio. This instrument, built in the last decades of the 16th century, belongs to the Neapolitan type of spinet, the same of Fabri and Guarracino, because of many analogies can be attributed to the same Alessandro Fabri. The instrument has no outer case, but itself is very finely decorated in the walls and also in the lid, inside and outside. And also the ivory covers of the keyboard are very elegantly decorated. The instrument has come down from the noble Cenci Bolognetti family and possibly belonged to the celebrated Beatrice Cenci, known for having let murder her violent and tyrannic father, and for this reason beheaded in Rome in 1599 when she was only 22 years old. The instrument has a keyboard with a range of 4 octaves, C to C, with the normal first octave short. This grand harpsichord, a real gravicembalo, as Italians said at this time, is the prize instrument of the collection because of the perfection of its building, the beauty of its sound, and the richness of its colors. It was built in Ferrara in 1679 by one of the most important harpsichord builders of this time, Giovanni Battista Giusti of Lucca. It was built on commission of the Marquis Ippolito Bentivoglio of Ferrara. The instrument has a range from the very low G to the C3 without the first G sharp. It is the compass requested, for instance, by the Esercizi per Gravicembalo by Domenico Scarlatti. Giovanni Battista Giusti was a pupil of another great harpsichord builder, Girolamo Zenti. The instrument has 3 stops. Normally, Italian harpsichords have only 2 stops. 3 stops, that is 3 sets of strings. 2 are tuned at the same pitch, and the other 1 octave higher. In using the technical terminology, we speak of 2 8-foot and 1 4-foot stop. Here, the first 8-foot stop adding the second one, and then the 4-foot The outer case has the lid with painting by Giuseppe Zola. These paintings were made some decades before the instrument was built. Giuseppe Zola was born in Brescia, but was active in Ferrara. In 1681, Louis Denis, a member of a Parisian dynasty of harpsichord and organ builders, built this bend-side spinet, inspired by Italian models. In fact, this type of instrument was invented by the Italian Girolamo Zenti, who was active all over in Europe and was in France between 1666 and 68, already imitated by local harpsichord builders. For this reason, this kind of instrument was called in France épinette à l'italienne. This instrument has a range of 50 keys from the very low G to the C3 with first short octave. The soundboard is decorated with flowers in a very elegant way, and the case has decoration displaying a rich repertoire of chinoiserie that began to be in vogue at the time of Louis XIV. Under the soundboard of this spinet, we could read long inscriptions by the hand of the builder himself, who tells us that the instrument was built for his daughter Marie-Angélique, who in 1689 married Louis Marchand, a very famous French composer, an excellent musician, but a very bad husband. When I found this grand harpsichord in 1976, only one element of its origin was known. The date we can see in gilded letters on the top of the lid. It is very probably also the date of the instrument itself, not only of the lid of the outer case to which the lid belongs. The instrument, one thing I could realize immediately, has a keyboard whose original rank was of 53 keys, like other instruments of my collection. For instance, the Giusti harpsichord, from the very low G to the C3. But we see, when we look at the keyboard, that during the history of the instrument, changes was made. In fact, first, the range was extended down to the very low F, adding the keys for the F and also for the missing F sharp. In a later moment of the history, also the treble was extended from the C3 to the F3, reaching the total compass of 5 octaves. During about 20 years, I didn't think to restore the instrument to playable conditions. I had the outer case restored, especially the beautiful paintings covering all the surfaces of the case. But I thought that restoration could be dangerous because of the changes made during the history. But finally, with the experience we had at the end of the 90s, my restorers, my whole self, decided to restore the instrument. And for restoration, it was necessary to remove the soundboard, so we could see the inside of the instrument and its structure. At this moment, we had a surprise. On one element of the structure, it's a knee of the so-called spine, that is the very long wall. One inscription is to be found. The inscription is in French, and that was another surprise. Ce clavecin est fait par Monceau Mattia de Gand. That means this harpsichord was built by Monsieur Mattia of Ghent, Ghent or Gand, the very known town of Belgium. Mattia de Gand was a distinguished Flemish harpsichord builder active in Rome. When this instrument was built, Mattia de Gand worked in the workshop of Giuseppe Boni. He built the instrument but was not allowed to put his signature. He put it, but the signature was hidden inside. It is one of the several cases in my collection of signatures or inscriptions hidden, or, as I am pleased to say, given or written for the eternity. At this moment, we were sure also that the instrument was built in Rome, where Mattia de Gand worked. Also, the painting was certainly built in Rome because of the element of the city of Rome we see. About 2006, when the catalogue of my whole collection was published, the expert of history of art, Maria Cristina Casali, could identify the hand of the painter. It was another Flemish man active in Rome, Jan Frans van Bloemen, called L'Orizzonte, the horizon. It's very interesting to see that everywhere in the painting we see elements of the city of Rome and of the country around Rome, but also of the Tyrrhenian Sea, very close to Rome. And the sea, the sky, and the horizon are continuing in the back side of the instrument, representing in a certain sense the implicit signature of the painter. The stops are two, according to the Italian tradition, tuned to the same pitch. This splendid instrument is one of the three harpsichords of the collection by the Bolognese harpsichord builder Giuseppe Maria Goccini. Built in 1725 for the noble Bolognese Gozzadini family. Looking at it, one has the impression to see an instrument in an outer case. But in fact, the outer case is a false one. We cannot separate instrument and case. Americans are used to speak of inner-outer or of false inner-outer instrument. The range is the classical range of the great gravicembalo from the very low G to C3 with two unison stops. Goccini was very inventive and introduced in this instrument a special mechanism not known in any other harpsichord, pulling a knob underneath the keyboard, a system of lever under the keyboard, actions super octave coupler for the treble and a sub-octave coupler for the bass. That means that the right hand is doubled in the upper octave and the left hand in the lower one. The whole instrument has beautiful painting decorations attributed to Nicola Bertuzzi. The paintings are on all sides, on both sides of the keyboard, on the music desk, and on the lead flap. On the lead flap, you see a mythological scene, Hercules with Omphalis. And on the right side, a very lively and funny Bacchanal. The collection in San Colombano owns 3 harpsichords by one of the best builders of Bologna, Gioseffo Maria Guccini. Born in Bologna in 1675, Guccini built these 3 instruments in 1721, 25, and between 30 and 33, respectively. The first one was destined for England, the second made for the noble family of Bologna, Gozzadini, and the third one is the present small harpsichord, tuned 1 octave higher, an octave harpsichord. It was probably destined for a female singing school, as suggested by the long list of female names written by pen on the inner flap lid. The instrument has no outer case, but elements of a false outer case. The elegant stand is original. The decoration, with scrolls and foliage imitating inlay work, fits within the poor cabinet work. The compass of the keyboard is of 4 octaves from C to C, with first short octave. This strange object is in fact a harpsichord, a folding harpsichord. We see it now in the folded position. Later we will see it while opening it. It is divided in 3 sections, and before folding it, its keyboard has to be taken out. This kind of instrument seems to have been invented in Italy. Only 4 harpsichords of this kind, Italian harpsichords of this kind, are known today. 2 are in the normal pitch. 1 is in Rome, built by the famous Sicilian harpsichord builder Carlo Grimaldi at the end of the 17th century. The other is this one, built in the first decades of the 18th century. Analogous instruments, but slightly different, were created in France by Jean Marius. The folding harpsichord is the perfect instrument for traveling. We know that the great Frederick, King of Prussia, had a folding harpsichord and traveled with it when he wanted to play the flute, being accompanied during the trips and even during the wars. And also the great singer Farinelli owned 2 or 3 folding harpsichords. The instrument has a normal keyboard with 45 keys, 4 octaves C to C, and 2 stops, 2 unison stops in the normal pitch. Bartolomeo Cristofori, a great harpsichord maker born in Padua and active in Florence at the service of the Gran Principe Ferdinando de' Medici, created or invented at the very end of the 17th century a new, or maybe better, the new keyboard instrument, the cembalo a martelli, the harpsichord with hammers, that is the pianoforte. Cristofori was so clever that in his instrument we can find all essential elements of the modern piano, included the escapement. Cristofori had good pupils. The best was probably Giovanni Ferrini. Both Cristofori and Ferrini built instruments for the court of Spain, where Domenico Scarlatti and the famous singer Farinelli were active. Farinelli received as a gift from the Queen Maria Barbara several instruments. His favorite instrument was a pianoforte built by Ferrini. In 1746, Ferrini had the idea to combine together the old and the new, the harpsichord with plucked strings and the pianoforte with hammers, and built this instrument with 2 keyboards. The low one corresponds to the piano, the low one corresponds to the harpsichord and the upper one to the pianoforte. It is not impossible that the idea came to Ferrini just from Domenico Scarlatti. And it is probably no coincidence that the year 1746 is the year in which Maria Barbara was elected Queen of Spain. Probably Ferrini built a twin instrument for the Queen Maria Barbara, an instrument we don't know at the present time. This instrument is built with an extreme perfection and with many inventions. The two keyboards have a large compass that allow to play a rich repertoire, including most of the sonatas of Domenico Scarlatti. The range is going from the very low G to the E3. Moving the lower keyboard, one can play the harpsichord with both, with one rank, or if you want, with one stop, or with both together, while the piano always plays the couple of strings.